Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com. My name is Neil with Simpson Family Jeeps, and I'm joined in Grandma's Couch Studio with only uno of my normal compadres.
I'm sorry, we don't have the boring mad scientist facts today, so it's just me, Jeff, sitting over here.
I will just talk like this and say that I'm full of adrenaline.
No, I got to tell you. So my daughter drew a picture for Scott's daughter.
Okay.
And it's sitting on his desk so that when he comes back to work,
Sure.
he can take that home to her. In the drawing, this is the best thing ever.
Oh, dear.
Scott is drawn as a robot.
Oh, that is awesome. Scott is drawn as a robot. Well, that seems to be fitting.
All right, how better?
Oh, that seems to be fitting. Oh, gracious. Well, as you may have surmised, folks, the mad scientist will not be joining us today. He is unwell, and not just mentally, but physically, and he has no voice. Caught a bug going around, so we wish him and his family a speedy recovery, because I understand they were all kind of down for the count over the weekend.
Saturday I knew it was him, and he could barely talk Saturday.
Yeah, I don't remember what time or day or something. I saw him over the weekend or Friday or whatever it was. He had nothing. He was like raspy, So he was like that commercial from the 90s where you smoke 6 packs a day and they were, talking out a straw in their throat. So we wish him the best and family for recovery. I promise we're going to make today's episode as entertaining as possible. I know everybody comes for Scott, really. Yeah. That's why you're here. But
boring facts with Scott Brown. I mean, that's
boring facts with Scott Brown. But we are actually going to be talking about a bit of a subject that we had thrown around previously, which, despite how kind of prolific or successful, businesses or sitcoms or any type of outward reach becomes, oftentimes you have to kind of have one of those flashback episodes, and so you're going to have to use your imagination.
I was going to say I don't have the wavy filter set up.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is you need to imagine if you're watching us either live, which you're all welcome to do, or on YouTube at a later date, or
I know what's going to happen.
What's
on
that?
YouTube? Davey's going to have to edit this, and he's going to put the wavy filter in and flash back to the original podcast. Just for a couple seconds, just to show it.
Yeah.
And then come back to reality
that
again.
would be so funny. But what I was going to say, for those of you who are listening and for those of you who are watching, you're going to have to pretend you're that wavy filter and the noise as we go back in time.
Do that again?
No, you got a one and done, man. You get a one and done
until I loop it later,
right? And we'll be talking about some vulnerabilities and a little bit of the origin story, if you will, of SFJ. So a lot of me divulging some information to you.
I need to jump into the comments. First
Absolutely.
of all, we've got Nathan with first, and Nathan is a new first.
To my knowledge, he's a new first.
So good morning, and
good morning to Nathan, and congratulations on being a new first.
And then we've got Joe O'Brien, Geauga Jeepers, Eric Elliott, Daddy Jeep, and Gene Whitling, all saying good morning.
Good morning to all of you.
Jeannie, I said
Jeannie. Yep. That's all right. So sometimes the reading and the translation don't always jive.
I know. I had to mess it up since Scott's not here to do it.
Right. Oh my. But good morning.
He said not my first rodeo. No, but I think it's your first time being first. Is that right?
That's what we're under the impression of.
Maybe, I don't know.
I'm going to say it,
We've had a lot of episodes. It's hard to track all that.
That is the case, but it seems like that's a name that is first in my mind here.
Are you going to try to pronounce the last name?
I can't even see it at the moment. I got my sunglasses on because I'm staring right into one of the studio lights. And for whatever reason, I'm feeling a little sensitive on the eyes today. I did a lot of driving.
I'll spell it out for you. It's
okay.
SAVKA.
Like Savka?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a nice name. I'm gonna refrain. What you're trying to do?
Yes, I'm trying.
What
to
you're trying to do is get the peculiar quirkiness of my brain.
Oh, he's off. Sometimes here's Mudhorn Gladiator.
Oh, excellent.
That's why.
There we go.
Okay.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
I know what you're trying to do is you know me well enough that you gave me that last name and you want me to utilize one of the unfortunate little impulse control mechanisms or lack thereof in my brain and attempt to associate it with a dialect and then do a really bad
100% what I was trying to do.
Yep. If this is one of your first times joining us, I'm not going to do that for you.
He said you pronounced it well, so now I feel like you have to.
Nope. That one is a lot of throat when we're talking about the mother country.
Joe says we just call him Nate.
There you go. So, anywho, we are going to be talking a little bit about the origin story. I do want to take a note if you are in Western Pennsylvania, and I have absolutely no idea what the roles as far as the numbers for the event look like. But as of this coming weekend, it is the Starlight Ride with OVJ, Oil Valley Jeeps, in Oil City, Pennsylvania, at the 10 Mile for 2 Mile organization, or that run. And so at 2 Mile County Park this weekend coming up is the Starlight Ride. Again, I don't know. They might be totally booked out. They might not be taking any more reservations. But if you're an off-roader who's looking for something to do and want to do a nighttime run that's kind of friendly for most levels. We did a YouTube video on it this past summer. It did pretty well. A lot of people seem to like it. That club is very well organized and provides a really nice structure to their run. So that's coming up this coming weekend. Additionally, the Southington Off-Road Run just passed.
And that was a little bit different this time around.
Yes.
It was a one-day only event.
Yes. Don't know exactly what attendance looked like, but I wish them the best. I know that it was a one day only.
Yeah.
I do know that there was a number of people there, out making the ride, and they're doing something a little bit different in 2025. They're doing every other month, and so they will not be active until April, the first full weekend of April, is my
They're doing an
my
April
understanding.
Fool's weekend, huh?
To my knowledge, yes.
Ah.
To my knowledge, yeah. So, and then if you're also in the area, I don't know when BFR is, but I did see, I believe, a BFR ride towards the end of the month. But maybe somebody will jump into the comments and make us aware of that. So,
looks like Eric's saying they still have a few spots open for that ride coming up.
Okay, Eric is saying OVJ's ride, and that is the Starlight Ride. Unfortunately, I will be out of town for that weekend. Otherwise, that is a notch in my belt, a sticker I'd like to collect personally. I have not had the opportunity to do so. But I did register for a couple of years ago, but I was unable to make it. I was hoping that this year would be the year. I was glad I got to support him in July, but coming up in this weekend, I know they'll be doing it. So a couple spots left. If you're looking to wheel, there's opportunity. Additionally, towards the end of the month is it used to be called the Dayton Off-Road Expo.
Yeah.
It has Mid-America. Yep. And used to be an event, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit in the origin story today, that we heavily supported, and I still do wish them the absolute best. It is a super great show in the nature of something to do in the winter. But that is coming up this month. So if you're getting a little cabin fever,
BFR was Sunday, according to Joe.
Oh, it was just this Sunday. Oh, see, you know what you could have done if you were skilled enough in your time blocking, you could have wheeled SOR on Saturday and gone over to BFR.
Yep.
On Sunday.
Yep.
All right, a missed opportunity. Anyways, there's definitely, if you got a little bit of cabin fever and you're in the Great Lakes region, there are definitely some off-road events for you to do. Additionally, King of the Hammers was well underway, and lots of footage is kind of trickling out. Chocolate Thunder, if you are on any of the kind of the more rugged off-roading sites, you'll see the Chocolate Thunder run just happened, and it was it did not disappoint. So if you're looking for carnage and drunken fist fights among off-roaders, and that's your level of drama interest, Chocolate Thunder did not disappoint.
Huh.
It's what happens when I saw Best posted online, when alcohol, ego, and big engines mix, you get this event. Yeah, so
makes sense.
If that's your cup of tea, definitely check out some of that coverage. It was pretty interesting to see. I watched a JKU try to patiently wait for an XJ to make pick a line and make a move, and then they got done waiting and they just decided to drive around and then eventually over a portion of the front clip of the XJ. And I just, I try to put myself in that position.
Yeah.
And go, what would I have done in either capacity? And don't get me wrong, it's not like they inflicted huge consequential damage, but I mean that XJ definitely has a 40-42 tire track across the front driver's side headlight and front valance and front fender and all that kind of stuff. As the JK picked the line and came around it, and the JK, you can see the guy arguing with the XJ owner, trying to tell him to back up and get the heck out of the way, and the XJ owner's trying to say, wait your turn, this is my line, and so on and so forth, and they just let it rip. So, whatever, your cup of tea. You can go find plenty of coverage from that event over the weekend, which was also a nighttime run.
Yeah. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning to everyone. So, origins.
Yeah.
Yep, there's your transition noise.
I don't know which one I like better.
I know. I thought I'd give you both. I figured I'd give you both. I'm not pronouncing names or doing accents today.
But you're doing the sound effects.
But you got a little bit of mouth music from me.
Is that what we call that?
All right. So, I've been recently exposed to some conversations of people asking or at least kind of elaborating on what they believe the perception of our current position as a business in the Jeep and off-road market, as an individual, as a business leader in the local community, and so I've had to field a number of questions recently. In addition to that, we have experienced, obviously, as much as we've gritted it out, what I might call an explosive opportunity, both on YouTube and on our podcast, right? We're now 70 plus countries worldwide. Our YouTube is tens of thousands of views. We're pushing, 500,000 on a couple of our videos. I mean, there's some pretty good stuff out there for what we're doing. And so there's these metrics, and it's always been interesting to me how people, they kind of, I always used to say, we are the business that you believe we are when you encounter us. Okay. Now, I'll also kind of extend that to say, I am the individual that I am that you believe I am when you encounter us. So,
oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy. That says a lot.
Well, the challenge is, people come in and go, oh, well, they really have it together. They've got this going on. They're this entity. They've got these things, right? And
my favorite analogy of yours in that situation is the duck on water.
Absolutely. 100%. Duck on water, right? And the perception and what Jeffrey's expanding upon there is that our expectation is to present a business and obviously prioritize our communication with our customer, our focus on their vehicle, on their expectations, and arguably doing what will make them happy through our three-part process: educate, document, make the customer happy, right? And that's, if you've never heard me say that before, that is a core principle of SFJ4x4. Educate, document, make the customer happy. And we've taken that so far as a step that is why we do social media. Somebody recently commented on one of our kind of viral videos, was like I can tell you're really invested in your clients. They use the word clients, but of course, whatever, they could be from across the pond. I don't know. And they were like, thank you for so much information. and if I was closer, I would absolutely bring you my vehicle, you know? And I thought, okay, I can really get behind that. I can dig that. Of course, regardless of where you're listening to us, you can ship us a vehicle. 30% of our vehicles come in on some form of truck transport. So whether that's, your AAA because you're within 100 miles, or, some form of truck trailer, or, international sort transport,
Florida,
whatever.
California,
Whatever.
Texas.
Yep.
Bring them up.
So, we're not constrained by geography. So
have we
don't
had
let
any
that
Canada Jeeps yet? Like actually from Canada?
Yes.
I thought
so.
But
we actually had some Canadian Jeeps prior to COVID, and would arguably be, prior to your employment here. But we actually had a couple that, I actually had great relationship with the ownership of those customers, and they came down about once a summer and visit us and had some service work done to them. One of them happened to be an XJ. It was kind of cool, and we have not had a Canada Jeep since COVID, honestly. But yeah, it was kind of a fun one.
We had one in the shop, Allison's.
Oh, true that.
Yep.
True that. Post-COVID was Allison Parliament, official ducking.
Yep.
But, so we thought, we kind of got off on a little bit here to say that an opportunity, when we have such a substantial reach, sometimes we have to go back and create perspective for people, right? Because now we have all these people tuning in and listening and downloading and kind of encountering the business where they believe it is. And so, we as humans, as society, we make these choices based off of the name, based off what I'm hearing, based off the perception of how put together you are, right? The duck on water. On the top, we're cool, calm, collected, and invested in our specific reach, whether that is directly to the customer or to you all through our social platforms. But underneath the water, we're going 1,000 miles a minute, nose to the grindstone, pulling out all the stops.
Yep.
So after we've had kind of a large tech and history heavy conversations, we thought we'd kind of throw it back and tell you, just as a nice refresher, where this all comes from. What are you looking at there? What do you got on the screen? Anything good?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just monitoring
and looking at the fact that Davey had moved some lights for recording of other videos, and I'm looking at our display and how our production studio is not very clean right now because I can see the lights on the camera that I shouldn't see, and the reflection and the I Speak Jeep sign of the light.
Producer, I feel like we were in here for 45 minutes prior to airing at this point. Was that not something we could have brought up then? God, squirrel, goodness, and I'm bad. All right, so fun fact, folks. Whether you're familiar or not, my parents were both educators. First misconception is that in some capacity, my parents started the business, or there was some direct funding stream available to make that happen. Didn't exist. So my parents were both teachers. I have a great deal of respect for that type of public education, and I always use the term. My father worked on vehicles and equipment out of necessity, not out of any particular desire to do so, and or way to improve it himself or anything to that capacity. So what they were incredibly supportive and insightful, right? They taught me a number of life lessons that I've carried on into creating my own business. And specifically, they allowed me to kind of just flourish to a sort. They never told me I couldn't do this. Where there was a lot of people back in the day who were like, "You think you're going to be able to just work on Jeeps?" And I was like, "Yes." And my parents, kind of supported that in a mindset. Say, hey, if you want to just work on Jeeps, then hey, that we'll probably be able to do that. So, with that said, We couldn't afford a Jeep because Jeeps were expensive. This was the early 90s. And we used to have what we call Jeep Alert. And as a family, it was like Punch Bug, right? Or Slug-a-Bug or whatever game you played with, the Volkswagen Beetle. And we called it Jeep Alert. And we would be riding in my father had a K5 Blazer and then a clapped out S10 Blazer. And we had a Hyundai and like an Oldsmobile of my mom's car, So those were like the kind of the formative year vehicles. And we'd be riding those and we would see a Jeep and we would yell Jeep Alert. And that's kind of, we played padiddle, I think, and you touch the roof.
Depends on where you were at.
Right, totes, yep. Right? And whether you take off an article of clothing, it depends on the party that you're driving with, or you touch the ceiling.
That, or you touch a rivet on a bus or punch somebody, whatever.
Right.
There's all different variations.
So Jeep Alert was this combination of, slug bug or punch buggy, whatever you want to call it, and padiddle. It was Jeep Alert, and we would touch the ceiling, right? And this was the it's a Jeep thing you wouldn't understand era, which is so funny because we don't ever use that phrase anymore, folks. But I mean, we were using that phrase to conceptualize the Jeep life, which is kind of funny. And if you weren't around then, there's your insight. We used to have these banners and these stickers and everything said, it's a Jeep thing you wouldn't understand. So finally, my father gets to a point where he is at a point in his life, and he is 19. It's 19. Let's see, it's 96 or 97, and he's able to purchase a 1995 YJ Wrangler. It's a beautiful, clean vehicle. We automatically throw some bigger tires and wheels on it, throw some side steps, get some of the accoutrements. Nationally, we were starting to move towards more of your bolt-on manufactured accessories is what I would call it. Because prior to, and understand, and maybe I should back this up, my grandparents were resourceful people, and my dad's first Jeep was a 60s CJ5. It had a Dauntless V6 in it, which Fred Modice will appreciate. So that was kind of our first experience. Great motor, great Jeep, and we just used it as a farm vehicle. My grandfather purchased it from my dad, put a fiberglass body on it because that's what you did in the 80s and 90s, and we used it as a farm vehicle. That was the extent of our ownership of Jeeps. But we were that family that proverbially learned to drive stick in a farmer's field, in the hay field, using it to pull hay wagons and do parts runs and get tools and equipment every time the shear pin on the baler broke or your tractor ran out of diesel or gas or you needed to run for lunch or whatever, you took the Jeep, right? And it was this great farm vehicle. But realistically, that was the absolute extent prior to this 95 Wrangler. My father purchased this 95 Wrangler around 96, 97. In the same time frame, somewhere in the mid to late 90s, I've had a couple other vehicles or whatnot. At that point in time, we go in and I get an 87 Wrangler, which, if you know anything about the YJ, or Jeeps in general, the 87 YJ Wrangler is pretty much the armpit of all Jeeps kind of ever produced. If had the opportunity to do kind of the worst Jeeps ever built, the 87 4.2 liter 5-speed manual YJ Wrangler is potentially one of the worst Jeeps that just ever was created. Thank you, Big Daddy Chrysler. So, I get this YJ, and I immediately do all the inappropriate modifications to it, and all of the wrong ways possible. I buy my wheels and tires long before I have a lift kit installed, because obviously wheels and tires make you look cool.
Well, yeah.
So, and because I have inchitis, I don't go for tires that would make sense. I go for 35s. And at this time in the late 90s, 35s are practically 40s, just so we're all on the same page. I know 35s fit on a stock Jeep at this point, but
right.
For those of us who are around, that was a big darn deal. In the same time frame, and ultimately, that Jeep was called the Tonka Toy, the Wicked Tonka Toy. I'm not super proud of the choices I made, folks, but I made choices and I live with them and I'm okay with them. So I will divulge to all of you who are listening, that Jeep absolutely had cheetah print interior and was titled the Wicked Tonka Toy.
What color was it?
It was an ugly cream white with butterscotch interior, so it was that tan interior.
Yeah.
So the cheetah print, looked good.
No. No. Sure didn't.
It sure didn't. But you know what? I gotta be honest, folks. At that point in time, I was not exactly interested in what other dudes thought of my Jeep. It sat 3 other people, and not ever was one of them really intended to be a dude. So the cheetah print interior was really not for me or for you.
You keep telling yourself that.
Fair sentiment. Interesting. It's like you were there, Jeffrey. With me and my Nokia cell phone and yeah, well, anyways.
I wonder how many times I passed you on the road going, what is that guy doing?
What is that thing? Right? Right? Yeah. And with little to no axle modifications whatsoever. And fun fact about this Jeep, and we were so naive, we knew so little about them. We responded to a classified ad in, what we used to have, the Auto Trader papers and all that kind of stuff, which my dad and I loved. And I was sharing, my dad filled me with tidbits, and he always said, another great deal will come along, right? Sometimes as humans, we convince ourselves that we have to capitalize on this spectacular opportunity right here and now because it'll never happen again.
Yep.
And reality is, very rarely do once-in-a-lifetime opportunities actually present themselves. They do happen, unquestionably. But, I learned that another great deal will come along. And so finally, after noodling and saving and doing all these types of things for entirely, a good period of time, we finally responded to this classified ad. And I'm jumping back to where I got the Jeep from. And my dad and I borrowed a truck, and we borrowed a trailer, and we headed up to Cleveland, and we got into a little tight, packed neighborhood. And we pulled in, and there was no Jeep to be found, and kind of walk around, towards the back of this guy's house, and it's dusk, right? So now it's started to get dark, and there is this derelict, falling apart Jeep, just bone stock, as kind of rudimentary as it can possibly be, sitting in the corner of this guy's driveway to his garage. And he said, well, you can fire it up and we'll take it for a test drive. I'll ride along with you. So that was, that's fine. I jumped in it and fired it up, and I was immediately in love. I took it for a test drive. You know what I didn't know, Jeffrey? It was stuck in 4-low. I was so naive that I didn't know that I actually was driving it in 4-low. So I did my entire first test drive, had a cracked windshield, went from A-pillar to A-pillar across the entirety of the windshield, had no carpet, no floor, it had floorboards. It was rust-free. All I cared about as a kid at that point in time was, did it turn on? Was it rust-free? And I really knew very little about the platform from there on out, right? And I knew I didn't want the 4-cylinder because, again, I have inchitis. So I needed those 2 extra cylinders no matter what. And I took it for a test drive. I went around the block. I remember rolling the gears. It got popped out of one gear. I had to shove it into another. All these fun things, right? There should have been 1,001 red flags on why I shouldn't have purchased this vehicle. Okay? If you've been on YouTube, you'll know that we have several videos specifically about how to buy Jeeps. I want you to know that comes from a intimate place of don't do what I have done.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yep.
Don't do what I've done. But I bought this Jeep because I didn't know any better. I didn't know what I didn't know until I knew it.
Yep.
Okay?
Scott's favorite phrase.
Scott's phrase, the mad scientist. So we buy this Jeep, we throw it up on the trailer, we load it. My dad and I haven't really hauled too many vehicles. We've hauled, hay bales and, some basic equipment around, but not really a bunch of trailering and stuff. And we haul it home, thank you to the guys who lent us the truck, who lent us the trailer in that situation. Unloaded it. I still remember unloading it out in front of my parents' house. It was, my family came out and looked at it. It was super cool, and kind of immediately went to work on kind of making it my own, and we had to do some safety stuff. But among that, after, honestly, a day, I realized it was stuck in 4 low. And I was like, wow, that was dumb, and started to build that Jeep into something that I could be proud of. And I learned a lot of lessons the hard way. If you're totally unfamiliar, that actually has the Peugeot transmission. You hear me kind of make fun of Peugeot constantly on this program. It is because I was one of the people that they specifically touched and hurt me with their absolutely subpar garbage transmission that had no business being in that nice torquey 6-cylinder 4.2 liter engine equipped solid axle Jeep. Additionally, had a garbage transfer case. Not exactly why I was stuck in 4 low, but garbage nonetheless. And had a crappy front axle, which was the CAD or center axle disconnect that YJs were known for, with a absolutely failed vacuum pump. So not only was it stuck in 4 low, but it had intermittent 4-wheel drive in the first couple of years, and eventually it just totally goes out.
Yep.
And so there's just all these quirks and issues. But ultimately, I built that Jeep up, and I drove it for about just under a decade from that point. It caught on fire on me. It left me stranded on the side of the highway multiple times. Ignition solenoids, starter solenoids, everything. Right? Constant headache of issues.
Where is that Jeep today?
Give me a second and I'll tell you.
Okay.
Right?
I was curious if you actually knew.
I don't. Oh. And honestly, I don't care. You know what I mean? There's so many people. I'll tell you right now. There's so many people who are like, oh, I wish I had my first vehicle back. I'm not that guy at all. I don't care. Honest to Pete.
Yeah.
And honestly, I hope that tumbler that you're drinking out of, which probably is made out of recycled metal. I hope that Jeep has been made into scrap metal, that has now been recycled, maybe into that tumbler, maybe into a pop can, maybe into one of those steel urinals that you go to the bathroom in at the national parks and stuff. I'd be tickled if that Jeep was getting that treatment at this point. You know what?
It's in one of the trough urinals.
It's
now?
one of the trough urinals. It's fine with me. Whatever. No, I just, you know what? I learned a lot of valuable lessons, and it took me a lot of places. But man, I did a lot of boneheaded things in it. It left me stranded as many times as it safely transported me places. I did a lot of gnarly stuff, right? So I ended up, I was 17, and I bought a 77 CJ5, which had the exact same engine. And it was a plow Jeep, and the engine had been rebuilt, and it had low miles on it, and blah blah blah. That classic story. And that was one of my first big swaps that I did, somewhere around 17 and a half. I took this plow Jeep, and the funny thing is, we have the grill still here within the business from that very first Jeep where I bought one to outfit another, and I took the best pieces of the 77 CJ. While they don't directly cross over to that 87, it was the process of actually very little crosses over, but it was how I built the foundation at 17 of going, hey, I can take this and take that, and I can take the best pieces of this drive line and this particular Jeep and put it into this one at a time where a CJ5 and a YJ couldn't have been more further apart on the national scale. I was taking them and meshing them into one platform. And I think a couple guys who were mechanics and mentors who let me bum around in their garages, because, again, that wasn't something necessarily a father-son project. My dad was more enabling me to do this and allowing me and giving me the space to do it and the encouragement to do it. But these mentors allowed me, took me under my wing, or took me under their wing, and, taught me what it was like to be in a garage. And yeah. I got to use professional equipment that I didn't have available to me as a kid, and it was a very cool experience that they were they allowed me to have. Now, swap that engine around because, of course, as I mentioned, that one that when I bought this thing in Cleveland, it was a hot garbage. Didn't know anything about it. I did run, but it literally had such poor compression on 3 out of the 6 cylinders that they basically were dead holes. But I didn't know that. And again, my dad didn't know that, right? It wasn't a motorhead necessarily. We were enthusiasts, not motorheads. And so that's why I end up swapping the engine so quickly in the process. But at roughly 17 and a half, that's when I kind of start my parts collection, because now I've got a bunch of parts from the CJ5 that I don't know what to do with it. And this is when the opportunity to sell them off and kind of help pay for the project that I just did becomes real to me, and and I gave the rest of the Jeep or the scrap of the Jeep to one of the mentors for helping me. So he went, and this is a time where scrap was actually paying good, and he scrapped that CJ5 and cashed out some. But anyways, I kept the good pieces. We sold some stuff off. He got his cut of it. It was all good, and I start this kind of understanding like this is a real thing,
Yeah.
So I start driving that Jeep around, and as I mentioned, there's good and there's bad. In the same time, my sister also purchases an '87 YJ Wrangler, which she affectionately calls the Hussy, and for all of the social implications possible, folks. So there's no hiding anything on that one, and she, and I'm gonna just lay it out there. Hers is all zebra print at that point.
Yep.
So mine is all cheetah print. Hers is all zebra print duct tape. She had zebra print interior, just like mine was the Converse. And the biggest difference, my sister is a few years older than me. The biggest difference is she gets involved in the club scene, and clubs had just kind of circled back around with the advent of forums. So obviously we all the internet kind of boomed, and we all jumped on and kind of made our special interest groups with forums and hung out there. Clubs were a really important part of the off-road industry, specifically in the 70s and earliest 90s, and they kind of almost fell off by the 90s. There were still kind of comp races and some special events you could attend, but a lot of your localized clubs had, kind of fallen by the wayside. Well, clubs resurged, and my sister got involved in a fledgling club called EJP, or Erie Jeep People, which honestly is a phenomenal group of individuals who were dedicated to really working their Jeeps over. So there was a couple clubs in Ohio.
That club still exists today too.
100%, and it's still a phenomenal group of active Jeepers. Less on the forums anymore than any of us used to be.
Yeah. That's common trend. But the fact that there's still an existing club,
correct, is a testament to their foundation and B, their kind of their leadership over the years.
Because they've got to be almost 30 years at this point.
I've got to imagine they're pushing 30 years as far as 2025 is concerned. And the thing is, my sister got in right at the very formation of it. So, I mean, we knew a number of the founding members, and she was right in there, and they started doing comp runs themselves. So my sister, in her credit, started doing comp runs of sorts in the Hussy, this 87 Wrangler. Now, shout out to her, manual steering, because again, power steering was an option.
Yeah.
Kind of funny, right, to think about, but she had manual steering, so she manual steered this thing through the comp runs, and fortunately, it was a 4-cylinder, so it wasn't super heavy nose weight or anything. But we kind of went down that rabbit hole.
To be able to go through with manual steering. When you think about that.
Yep.
I mean, you have an oversized wheel to compensate for it a little bit, but that's only a little bit.
And interesting enough, it was not oversized in the Wranglers. Steering wheel is exactly the same, a power steering option or a manual option.
Well, there you go.
So you're just really, it's all about momentum as far as allowing the vehicle to roll. So rolling resistance and driver input. And so she ran.
Think about some of the tight corners that we go on trails nowadays with power steering, and how much more challenging that would be.
Dude, the power steering industry is a huge market, and she was doing these comp runs and with manual steering with 31-inch super swampers and 2 inches of lift and just just hammer down. That's what we did. It wasn't the bolt-on market that we have available to ourselves, and modifying those Jeeps at that time was not at all what it is now, right? The expectation was different, the culture was different, and the parts availability. But parts availability is an important talking point, because at that point in time, we have Morris 4x4 on their come up, Quadratec on their come up, four-wheel drive hardware on its come up. All of these companies are tapping into the Jeep market. And again, when we started all this conversation with the YJs, the TJ technically hadn't even come out just yet. And so I have a tremendous amount of admiration for the TJ market, because it actually was kind of the first breaking of the mold. And it totally brought in a whole new group of people. The suspension was completely more capable. There was 10 more things you could do in a TJ than you could ever have done in our Jeeps prior, by say 99. 97, 98 had their quirks, but 98, 99, 2000, they were kind of hitting their stride on the TJ platform. So long story short, we have the three of us, my dad, my sister, myself, are all running Jeeps, Jeep Wranglers. My grandfather still has the farm Jeep, and he's getting into Willys at that point, specifically CJ2As, and he was a World War II vet, active in the occupation forces. And so despite the fact that we're into the civilian series Jeeps, he still has an appreciation for the military Jeep. So we have this deep-seated respect for the Jeep life. And again, this concept of it's a Jeep thing you wouldn't understand. And that was on shirts, it was on banners, and it kind of made us unique in the area. So by the time that I went to college, where most people were either playing video games and out partying, or majoring in foosball and drunken frat parties, I was desperately researching in my free time how to replace that crappy BA10 with an upgraded and revolutionary AX15 external slave, transfer case with gear reduction and all this kind of stuff. Because by the time that I'm in college, fortunately I went to college in Western Pennsylvania, they have hills there, because I had no reverse gear. Fifth and reverse were gone. So I had to make sure that I could park in places that I could roll out of. That was my big hustle, because I had no fifth gear and I had no reverse. And obviously where I'm going, I don't need fifth gear. It's just not my type of, Jeep was not built for speed by any stretch.
Right.
And again, that Jeep that I wish...
That's just because Fred didn't get a hold of it.
Well, that's 100% true. And that Jeep that I wish, has been turned into a urinal at this point, did cover a lot of ground for me. It was just a massive, massive winter storm, and I decided to drive home in the middle of the night after finals, and it did safely get me home and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, kudos to it, But realistically, I was noodling on where I could get this AX15, this combination of parts and pieces, and do this work, and yada, yada, yada. And eventually landed on a remanufacturer in Florida who could provide me all the parts and pieces. Luke Clutches, L-U-K, folks, was made right in Wooster, Ohio. We were still stateside manufacturing at that time. And they were an amazing clutch friction, friction disc manufacturer. And so they were made right here, in Ohio. And so I was going to throw a Luke clutch in there, and I got this whole combination of parts and pieces. So that spring break, of my freshman year, that's what I was doing, I was doing a full upgrade. And that kind of is this, I had already been doing some mail order stuff and some basic reselling, but this is my first time, as, of course, I'm 18, 19 years old, and now I'm coordinating manufacturing and remanufacturing components to put them together into a kind of a formidable product. And by the time that I'm home for spring break, I'm doing a big transmission transfer case swap, which again, I'm grossly unqualified for. I pull no punches with anybody at this point. I'm doing stuff that, I'm just kind of under the direction of good mentors and good support from my family and that kind of stuff. From there, that Jeep is great. Other than electrically, it is a nightmare because once you overcome the driveline quirks of that Wrangler, you get into the electrical nightmare that was the earliest years of the YJ. And realistically speaking, it leaves a lot to be desired. In that process, I end up picking up an XJ, 4.5 inch lift.
I'm just gonna go back for just a quick sec. You said electrical problems of that era, and I just want to reiterate how history just repeats itself
Over and over and over
we just
again.
continue to have electrical issues.
Yes. Yeah, the more the electric, and if you've heard me on this program before, I talk about like wanting a pick 'em up truck. I just want an engine and a bed and a slush box, you know what I mean, to row the gears.
Well,
and keep it simple, man.
Think about the cold weather right now and how many vehicles are just having weird hiccups because of all the electronics.
Yes. Yep. Electronics, the wetness. I think of your parents or your in-laws.
It was my dad's.
It was your dad's
Subaru.
Brand new Subaru.
Yep.
Just looks like it's a flood vehicle because of water intrusion.
Yep.
And the whole vehicle's geeking out. It's been in the dealership more than they've had it in their possession.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And they finally peeled it back far enough to find some internal wiring that looks like it's been in a Florida flood. And
like it's been sitting in the water for years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just the challenge. So and we had actually the insulation, and Jerry Huber might be able to weigh in on this, but the insulation, the actual sheathing for the wiring in the earliest 80s was shown to have breakdown and some thinness and stuff. So I was constantly having hiccups with electrical equipment in that.
Is that what led to the fire?
So funny thing is, the fire was in the dash. It was behind the dash.
Mm-hmm.
And I genuinely, it was a gauge wire, and what myself and a mechanic that I was working with at the time, and I did that repair entirely in my driveway, but had just gotten to the point that the insulation had thinned, just due to the natural warming of it, and had created a dead short.
Okay.
And so I singed this wire from point A to point B, and I was able to go in and cut out a portion of this harness, all the damaged stuff, and repair it, and stuff where it had fused to the wire next to it. But it was just due to the insulation, thinning. And reportedly at that time, that was a concern, complaint, or issue with these earliest models during the AMC Chrysler merger, if you will. So I buy in the XJ, got some really cool mods to it, but in my pursuit of bigger and better, it's a Renix era XJ, which those of you who know, but that's 87 to 90. It's before the HO series comes out. And if you didn't know how to work on a Renix, which, again, let's just go back to how kind of, Peugeot and company touched me. Renix is not too far removed from that. And so I'm learning on some of the most challenging platforms at the time. And again, it's just because I'm too bullheaded and stupid. Anybody else who's into vehicles or whose parents are remotely into vehicles would have cut ties at this point in time and been like, you know what? You just need to go get that nice, reliable Toyota, and drive it from point A to point B. But that was not what I was interested in. I was interested in banging my head against the wall repeatedly for cool modifications and slinky suspensions and big tires and all that kind of stuff. And the XJ carries me through. It's my first attempt at what we now call overlanding, which is just going camping when you can't afford it. And so that was what the XJ was for. Had a really cool roof rack, big bumper, big winches, 4.5 inches of lift, which if you know on an XJ means nothing. It means you can clear like 30s. I had 33s on it. And of course that's insufficient because of my inchitis. And went ahead, and by the time that I am graduating college, now, in the interim, my dad has picked up an Unlimited, an LJ, which obviously was the sweeping craze of that time. And as my dad does, in my interest, we always wait a year or two after the vehicle comes out and pick up something, try and get something you get that 30% depreciation off the lot. Somebody else can pay that, not us, and get a good low mileage. His was already a little bit modified. Skyjacker was king of the suspensions at the time. Pro Comp was thrown in the mix. Rubicon Express was a big one. These are all stateside manufacturers at that time, though, right? Keep all those things in mind. RC was actually Rough Country was a good manufacturer. Superlift, were all these names that were kind of thrown around. Now, I want you to know that my YJ, because I was frugal, because I spent my money on like the transmission and all that kind of stuff, and I have both Jeeps at the moment. At that time, I put under there a genuine steel suspension. That was like out of the back of one of these magazine catalogs. It was like, you don't really want to tell people that that's your lift, but that's your lift, And so that was my lift kit. It rode like an unladen dump truck. It was awful. But again, 4.5 inches, went for max lift that you could put under them, blah, blah, blah.
Back then, that was cool.
That was cool, right? Because it was a monster truck.
That's the ride you wanted.
Yeah, because the monster trucks were cool, you know? So anyways, of course, I have the YJ. It's sitting at home because obviously the XJ is my daily driver at that point. And I blow the engine up in the XJ. That was unfortunate. And now I need a replacement engine. And by the time that I'm graduating college, I said I was going to go to a reputable Jeep recycler in the area. And this reputable Jeep recycler had every part and piece you could possibly imagine. Really cool space, tons and tons of parts and engines and all this kind of stuff. And I went there and I inquired about getting an engine, and I didn't have the best experience. It just left some things to be desired. And I had already done some business at this establishment, and I decided at that time that I was not going to purchase my engine from this individual, this establishment, but that in fact, I had already been toying with this and the logistics of taking the best parts of one vehicle and making another. And I was going to go ahead and I was going to do this myself, right? So, well, you know what? I don't think it's going to be that hard. And so as I'm graduating college and I know everything and I know how to conquer and take over the world and I'm fully prepared for everything that life's going to throw at me, I'm also going to start this business. And so as a quick abbreviation to this particular segment, I found a Jeep that was in Columbus, Ohio, and had 10,000 documented miles on the engine. It was a rebuilt engine, had all the documentation. It was punched out. It was a Renix engine as well. And it had a huge lift on it, big bumpers, beautiful limited leather interior. And it was for sale on eBay. And as a know everything, know it all 21-year-old, I took out a $1,500 loan from a local credit union, and I bought that Jeep. Again, not having a truck or a trailer, we borrowed the truck, rented a trailer, and my dad and I headed down to Columbus to retrieve this vehicle. Met up with a cool dude who had bought it, who was the landscaper of the owners who had the Jeep built in Columbus. And the story goes is that they were lawyers, and this Jeep was built to just be their toy that lived on their farm. And they let their 16-year-old load it up with himself and 5 or 6 of his closest friends. If you're counting folks, XJ seat 5, he had somewhere between 7 and 8, 6 to 8 other people in the Jeep. And he tried to do like a side embankment, and he rolled it with all those people. Pretty significant crash, and the hood was all, or the hood was smashed in, the cab was all smashed in, everything was smashed to smithereens. But I didn't really care about that. That's not what I was there for. The thing that the guy couldn't tell me, all he could say was there was some type of, for lack of better word, prototype suspension. And that's what the lawyers blamed the suspension, the high center of gravity. Again, not the fact that there were 6 to 8 other people in this XJ. He's got it home, and started to do some digging and some research and so on and so forth. And kind of the neat thing, and again, now I've got this $1,500 parts Jeep, and I've got 2 Jeeps myself, and I've already acquired some parts and pieces. I've been working on, I have some really cool mentors. Everything I'm doing is really valuable for you to know is in my parents' driveway, which is a dirt driveway. We have an old collapsing barn, which I haul my tools in and out of the barn every time I want to use them, and I work under a tarp, in the inclement conditions. And I always kept saying, well, when I have a floor jack, when I have a this, when I have that, we're going to be able to do this, that, and the third. And start to bring this Jeep. And now we're really into some heavy lifting. So I need to disassemble it. I need to do the homework and whatnot. So I involved my cousin at that point, who's still loosely involved with the business. And he started his own hot rod shop at this point. Now, 2025, he's got his own hot rod shop that he's working on. But I employ my cousin in the process, and we start through the disassembly and merger of now these 2 Jeeps. I had already done it once with the YJ. Now I'm doing it with the XJ. The interesting piece, the suspension that I picked up, puts me in kind of a peculiar, special place. It is actually a Skyjacker suspension. It is 8 inches. It was the Rock Link or Rock Ready kit. Rock Ready kit. There was actually only 50 of them made at the time, and it was the precursor. It was the granddaddy. It was the Cro-Magnon, right? The stepping stone between your standard short arm lift kit and long arms. It was before long arms became a thing, but it's what we had in the moment.
Yes.
Right? This thus ensues this massive experience. That also is the summer that I met the mad scientist. And I was daily driving, I should say, at that point in time. My dad and I have the...
I'm going to jump to comments real quick.
Sure.
Because Nate said, nothing wrong with the driveway. My father and I installed the lift on my Gladiator in his driveway. I also installed the lift on my Gladiator in my gravel dirt driveway. That's way easier than doing a transmission or any of the other things that you did in the driveway.
That's true. But you know what the worst part is? And I'm not going to get to this point in the conversation, but at one point in time when I was living somewhere, random middle of Western Pennsylvania, one of my things was that I would advertise that I would do services with you. And so you would pay me a portion and we would do the service together, and I would teach you through the process. I can't begin to tell you how many people showed up. I was living at this little cottage in nowhere outside of Harrisville, Pennsylvania. And how many people showed up for me to put lift kits or do other Jeep-related installations in my gravel driveway as I drug tools in and out of this garage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a dirt floor garage, so I couldn't work in. It was a one-bay dirt floor garage. Couldn't even move the Jeeps in and out. A ridiculous, situation. But I give it up to you, Nate. I mean, it's challenging, and you kind of build some character. It's actually the reality of that is in part why all new hires... What is one of the first things, or what's your service schedule when you're working service?
Groundwork.
And
it's really funny because that is actually what I did and got hired off of, in my opinion, because I literally did it in a Friday night, Saturday morning thing, and came back up to the shop to grab something or talk to something.
Yeah.
Another part I don't even remember, and that was
kind of it.
That was it.
But there's been
the willingness to do it.
And there's been people who haven't made it, folks. I mean, I need you to know that, because when you're hired here, we're not immediately putting you under a lift or, under the most cushiest conditions. You do groundwork because groundwork is viable.
I think it was a year and a half here before we shoved Scott off the lift.
That's probably true.
And then I got the lift, and then I immediately moved over to the front office
side. Yes. Yeah. But you know what, to kind of wrap this up, I mean, and those are the earliest origins, just to kind of sow the seed. I'm going to move real fast forward to 2012, because in this process, what I didn't bring up was I marry my dream girl, amazing woman who supports me through this process. We move between Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania and Ohio, and eventually we settle in Meadville, Pennsylvania. And my full-time pursuit, which, was employing a degree of my college work and whatnot.
I'm going to jump back to Nate's comment again about that, because he did it in about 10 hours. First ever lift kit installed. and included a 30-minute lunch break during a rainstorm. Man, that cuts hard because that's almost exactly what I went through.
Well, no, did you do the lunch break under the Jeep? That's what I want to know.
I don't know.
All right, that's what he's
I don't
telling
know.
us.
I mean, I know I definitely did under the sandwich with the grease and
Yeah,
dirt on it.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Just lay under there. Sometimes you lay under the Jeep and just contemplate life.
Yep. Life choices.
Life choices. Why did I do this? You know?
Yep.
So, so I'm going to fast forward, because there's some great stories in there where my sister gets a new Jeep, my dad's got a new Jeep, and we do these things that are just absolutely ridiculous shenanigans in the process. And we take these great trips. And I should have mentioned with that $1,500 loan, the whole Jeep didn't cost the $1,500. I think it cost around $1,300 after travel expenses. And that's another thing I've always accounted. The actual purchase price of the Jeep was less, but I always count my food, fuel, and depreciation. I did that as early as again, my teens and 20s. And anyways, we got these new vehicles. And so I remember coming downstairs. I was still living at home because, again, I'm just graduating college when I'm doing this. And I had spent the last $75 and I bought the domain name SimpsonFamilyJeeps.com. And I came downstairs and a template site, I should say. It was the domain and the template site. And my parents were like, what's the deal with that name, And I always, I said, a name should tell you what it does, right? A name of a business should tell you what it does. And so I knew that immediately. I wanted people to know that we worked with Jeeps and arguably just Jeeps. And the family part is just to kind of honor the support system that I was, the opportunity that I was afforded. A lot of families, tell you why you can't do things. My family told me how I could do things, even if they didn't have the means to financially support it or the location or the space or anything like that. They allowed me to do that pursuit. And Simpson is just obviously the namesake, the legacy. If I'm willing to put my name on something, that should speak to the integrity of the product that I want to deliver. And so that was the Simpson family Jeeps, My parents thought that was pretty cool. And we rode that all the way through 2018. So for about 11, 12 years, that was the namesake of the business, Simpson family Jeeps. People have always thought it was a dealership. They thought my parents started it, thought my grandparents started it. Nobody actually knows, But the reality is it was started by a know-nothing, completely unqualified, officially started by a 22-year-old college kid who thought he could take over the world and wanted to kind of, pay respect to people who came before him. And I just wanted to work with Jeeps. I wanted to utilize that specific knowledge. And I'll tell this 2012 story because it's one of my favorites. And despite the fact we didn't even get into the podcast, the social media reach, and any of that
I was going to say, we're at the end of the episode.
We're at the end of the episode. I was fired. It was the first time I had been fired from anything. I had pretty strong employment history otherwise. And I was fired from a job in 2012. And I had already obviously been doing the business and business logistics for a long time. And was ready to tackle an event. Been going to shows as an enthusiast, and Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival was in its second year at Cooper's Lake Campground in Western Pennsylvania. And my wife, being incredibly supportive in the process, said, "Yeah, honey, you can do that." And, for her, this was just kind of a glorified hobby that I was, not going broke doing. And Yet, right? And I had a truck at that time, which is actually still the truck that I still have in my hoard. Is the 1-ton Cummins dually. And I borrowed a trailer. This is kind of a theme here. Borrowed a trailer, an enclosed trailer. And I spent about 3 days loading up every bit of inventory, used inventory that I had. And I had a camper because I had already planned. At that point in time, my wife and I had socked away just a couple dollars. We were going to do a big tour of the West, go see the Grand Canyon, see Devil's Tower, Mount Rushmore, all that kind of stuff. And we were going to haul the camper and my 95 YJ that I had at the time, baby Jeep. And we're going to haul all that West and just kind of adventure, double income, no kids, couple dogs, that kind of stuff. And I was loaded up with the truck and the trailer, ready to go. And, that's when stuff happened. So instead, I load up this enclosed trailer. We head down to Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. I don't register. I don't communicate, anything. I'm desperately trying to call anybody I can to say, hey, I'd like to be a vendor. I'd like to do this. I mean, they're in year 2. They hardly know what they're doing at that point either. And we roll in after hours. Right, I had spent the last $300 that I had in my personal bank account that was, able to be divested. The last $300 I possibly had to pay for registration. And we roll in pretty much on fumes on the truck and trailer. It's the middle of the night. I have no idea where I'm supposed to go. I don't actually have. I paid for registration, but I got no confirmation because it was the last minute. My wife and I show up to Big Butler Fairgrounds. The Big Butler Fairgrounds, we hop the fence. We walk across. This is like 1 a.m. Walk across to the security shack. They're like, we don't know what to do with you. Like, what the heck? Now, first of all, my wife hopped the fence with me. I'm there to vend Jeep parts. Like, this is the most abstract thing ever, We're in the middle of the night doing this. And the security officer said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have you pull around. You're going to nose up to the front of the gate. That means when the gate opens at 6 a.m. tomorrow, you're going to be the first vehicle in the grounds. And you better figure out what you're doing between then and 9 o'clock. Otherwise, we're pressing charges, da-da-da-da-da. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, you know what I mean? And because, again, the truck and trailer was on the other side of the property. So sure enough, I pull around the property, come right up to the guard shack, nose right up to the gate, shut her down. My wife and I crawl in for 3-4 hours of sleep, get in at 6 a.m., start the hustle, trying to figure out where we're going to do, what we're going to do, make sure people got our registration. Shout out to the leadership at Bantam. They were accommodating to us at that time. Sure enough, we started throwing these parts out on the ground. My wife tells a story. She's looking at us going, all these rusty, junky, crappy parts, She's like, my poor husband, he just got fired. He's got all of these, spent everything he had in this little process, had a little tchotchke sign, had a couple cards made up, and had all these parts out. And the moment the show opened, we were off to the races. People started coming up. They had seen the Craigslist posting, the eBay postings, the different forum postings and whatnot. And they came up, they started buying, parts for their Jeeps and doing consultations. Oh man, I saw that you had free information. Oh, I saw you did this lift, whatever. We didn't really have social media the way we have it now, or the same way. And it was just off to the races. We made enough money there to fill up the tank of the truck. We took a little vacation up to the mountains, and the rest is history, as they say.
Very nice.
That's all we got. That's all we got time for. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of that origin story. I know it was a lot of just long-winded me talking, but I think it's valuable to put in perspective when people see the building, the social reach, the different vehicles, the reach we have with our customers.
I mean, there's so much more over the years after that story.
There's so much more
led to where we're at today.
Oh my God, there's so much more that's just the business. And maybe you'll just have to stay tuned for, maybe it'll be 6 weeks from now, maybe it'll be 12 weeks from now, and we'll pick up with the
Origin
business.
Origin
Part 2 with where Scott's grinding and Greg's sleeping on the floor, and where Jeff the Builder is now building infrastructure. The first podcast is in the Old Blue, the 64 CJ6. So many trials and tribulations that have.
You mean when Davey and I started and we walk into a warehouse of parts that wasn't organized, and we're like, what are we doing here?
Yep. Forged in fire, man. That is the nature of the beast. So I hope you enjoy this, folks. Like I said, I believe in contextualization and understanding that, kind of where SFJ4x4 has come from is arguably just exactly where you yourself may have come from, and that I think makes us all
or maybe
the more
even
able,
where you're at right now,
or maybe where you're at right now, and makes us all the more able to relate and try to both protect your investment and to help you try to make the best decisions possible. If there is anything we can do for you, head over to sfj4x4.com, find all of our contact information there. Jump onto the social platforms. Check out the latest YouTube video if you haven't. It's a bell ringer. We're having fun with it. And until then, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Do they hear that goat?
They hear that goat. You ask this every week.
If
I've just
they
left
don't
it
hear
there.
it, I'll just give it to them.
Every once in a while, I'll edit it out for the outro part afterwards.
Do they? Do
every
you?
once in a while, but that's only for the podcast listeners.
Sure.
The live hears it.
The live hears.
I just left it at this point.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. They've grown to enjoy it, and you know what? It's amazing. Some people log off, log out. But you don't have to. You can listen to how our weekends were.
Yeah.
And what was your weekend? What did your weekend entail?
Oh boy.
That good, huh?
It was busy.
Okay.
Mostly working on nonprofit stuff. Obviously, we've got the big event going. So
when is the big event for our listeners?
Labor Day weekend.
Okay.
So August 30th, 31st, and that is a 2-day festival downtown Erie.
Yep.
So working on getting music license filed, getting taxes filed, getting writing the annual report because we have to get that published and out to the public and to the state. There's requirements on that. They're designing the raffle tickets, the flyers for the event. There's just so many icky-picky things, getting quotes from suppliers and vendors and trying to get all this put together. So a lot of that. But also for the shop, I was doing some woodworking and I had to rip some boards down. And I've got that new table saw. Well, it's just been living in the house because I didn't have room in the garage because my garage is a mess. So
you cleaned that garage really and organized and built shelves within the year, last year.
I started to.
Okay.
I never finished.
I mean, I saw pictures. I saw a picture of the shelf. You were feeling really good. You found stuff. You organized stuff. What happened to that? Kids do that.
Life.
Kids do that.
Kids, life, whatever.
Okay.
Just throwing stuff in there and going, I'll get to that later.
Oh, my God. I get that too much.
So I spent a little time in the garage on Sunday, a few hours, trying to rearrange, reorganize a little bit.
Sure.
Nowhere near where I want to be, but I at least made room that I could put the table saw in and did that. Got the boards ripped down for the project here at the shop. So that's pretty much what my weekend entailed.
Sure.
I know you were out of town.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, it was a Jeep. It was a Jeep of experience, as everything always is, right? So my wife's JL is down. We're going to be putting a new engine in it, which is an interesting conversation for a future as far as cost benefit. Maybe we'll have to talk about that on air sometime, just doing cost benefit conversations. But we'll actually be putting a new 3.6 engine in her Jeep, so we can't drive that. That's our usual mode of family transportation. So we were stuck with my JKU, which some of you have seen, or folks would have seen in the YouTube videos recently. But it's in sorry state because life, right? So I have not done anything. Brakes are dragging and grinding. Suspension is loose up front and sagging, And I was like, well, I don't really have a whole lot of choice. I mean, it's mechanically sound enough that I can take my family to Pittsburgh, but I'm not going to lie. I kind of prayed the entire time, like, please don't break a drag link or a ball joint to fall apart as I hit one of these, curvy, bendy up and down hills and roads.
The roads are in major disarray right now from all the winter
Oh
freezes
my
and
gosh.
stuff.
Oh, to say the least, But you know what? In a testament to the rugged nature of our Jeeps, it held together just fine, got us there and back. I'm looking forward to throwing some new brakes on it. I'll be absolutely honest, because that every time, that point where it's metal on metal and it's just like I want to puke in my mouth when I hear it, but I'm like, I don't really have a whole lot of choice to do it. But it's kind of funny. I got that big winch hanging out over it. So it looks like a kind of a stinger of sorts. So I pull into all these different establishments in the city, and it hangs out over the sidewalk. It's kind of funny, you know what I mean? People look at it like, why is this guy with this winch sticking, 2 feet forward of his vehicle? And it's not 2 feet, but it was just kind of funny, But it worked well for us. And then worked on the house, did some house projects, and I'm going to get some pictures uploaded for Patreons. It was good giving them a little context of what's going on with the house. So trying to move along all of these little projects that I can at any given time. So pretty busy weekend overall.
Yeah, good.
Yep. Looking forward to getting back in the shop though.
Yeah.